Good morning, Mr. Pretorius. Good morning, everybody.
Morning, Chair.
Morning.
Good morning, Chair.
Morning. Yes, Mr. Pretorius.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Agrizzi, shortly before the adjournment yesterday afternoon, you were dealing with evidence concerning payments to the Department of Correctional Services officials. We hadn't named those listed by you in paragraph 34.3. But may I take you to annexure P1 to annexure P4. Just give me those annexure P1 to P4. P1 is at page 359 of bundle S1. Do you see it?
Yes, I can.
Would you identify this document, please?
This document would be the list that I would provide to Jacques van Zyl to pack so that they can be collected by the various people.
What can be collected?
The cash.
Cash. Who compiled this document?
I compiled the document.
And when did you compile it?
This would have been deliveries on between the 20th and the 25th of April 2016.
And are you able to identify any names on this list?
Yes, I am.
Before you do that, you confirm that when you say the cash, you mean the bribery cash.
Correct.
Okay.
Please go ahead then, and in relation to the list, in paragraph 34.3, tell the Chair whose names are encoded as you've given evidence on this list.
If you look at paragraph 34.3, Chair, the following payments were made to the Department of Correctional Services officials on a monthly basis. The first one is 34.3.1, is Josiah Marco. The amount of 15,000 Rand was paid to him. Mr. Marco was the contracts manager for correctional services, or is the contracts manager.
Yes.
The second person was Maria Mabena. She was responsible for catering and development and care. Then it was Commissioner Shishi Matabela, who received 10,000 Rand.
Would the people that you are mentioning be based at the head office of Correctional Services or different offices?
These are based at head office, sir.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Shishi Matabela, who's the Commissioner for Development and Care, she would receive 10,000 Rand. These were the initial amounts. Chair.
Yes.
There was a Commissioner Mkabela, who was...
What was the name for Mkabela?
I don't recall his first name. I think it's mentioned further on.
Okay.
But right now I can't recall his first name.
Okay.
Mkabela would receive 10,000 Rand. There was a lady who used to be head of procurement called Dikaledi Chabalala. She would receive 15,000 Rand. There was a gentleman by the name of Zach Modise. At that stage, he was responsible for a region of correctional services, and at that stage, he would receive 20,000 Rand.
You don't remember which region?
If I recall, it was the Free State region, if I remember correctly. It's quite a while back.
Okay, all right.
So this was before his promotion to National Commissioner,
Okay.
where the amount then increased significantly. Then there's a gentleman by the name of Mollet Ngubo, who was responsible for finance. Those were the initial people that were, during 2007, identified by Ishmael Nwaba, Papa Leshabane, and Joe Gumedi as being influential in terms of the correctional services contract. And also, more importantly, because Mti had resigned and left, they needed to be able to yield some power in there. These amounts, up until, with the exclusion of Zach Modise, was all paid by Ishmael Nwaba, or Dikani. He changed his name to Dikani. That was taken by him on a monthly basis. Zach Modise would be handled by Papa Leshabane.
Yes.
Does that answer
Yeah.
the question for?
Let's go back to your lists, please.
Okay.
At page 359 to page 365 appear 4 lists, marked P1 to P4 respectively.
Correct.
Do any of the names you have just mentioned appear here, although encoded by you?
If we can go to page AA 361. Sorry, 361.
Yes, we're there.
And why I would like to refer to this is specifically because it corroborates my statement in terms of the fact that the handwriting and the signature at the bottom of the page is that of Jacques van Zyl.
Well, before we get to Jacques van Zyl, let's please examine the issue of whether the names you've just mentioned appear on any of these lists,
Yes,
whether
I will.
in code or not,
I will.
please.
Chair, if you look at the one that's highlighted on the 25th of the 2nd, 2016, Triple M is the initials.
Well, let's first say you want us to look at the list appearing at page 361.
Correct.
And that list, at the top, that list has got the date 25 to 2016. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yes.
Right at the top, you've got triple.
Does that date reflect the date when this list was compiled or written up?
That reflects the date the list was compiled and the bribery money was packed.
Okay, all right. Yes, go ahead.
MMM stands for Mollet Ngubo. His initials were Triple M.
Is that the first name on the left column?
That's correct.
If you can.
That's correct, Chair.
So you say that one is?
MMM is Mollet Ngubo.
Well, his initials were not MMM,
MMM.
MMN.
We always called him Triple M.
Triple M. That's Mollet and Google.
Yes.
Okay, continue.
That amount was 50,000 rand. And if you
What
have
was the amount? 50,000?
50,000 rand.
Okay.
And if you look behind that, it's got IMN.
Yes.
That was the code I used for Ishmael Nwaba.
So just to remind me of the evidence you gave us either last week or early this week, the principle guiding the codes you decided upon was that the code for each person would consist of 3 features. The one feature would be that at the beginning of the code would be the initials of the ultimate recipient. And then next would be a figure that represented the amount that that person would be paid, but you didn't write the whole figure for example, for 50,000 rand, you would write 50 only.
That is correct.
And for 100,000, you'd write 100.
That is correct.
And then after that figure would be the initials of the director or intermediary who would take the money to the ultimate recipient.
That is correct.
Am I right? Those were the features that guided how you decided on the code for each person.
And the code would change frequently, Chair.
Or it would change frequently.
Yes.
Would the features change as well?
No, the features stayed the same.
Yeah.
But what would happen is, for instance, if a person had a nickname, like one of the people was J.
Yeah.
So if they had a nickname and I would have to use the surname, I would switch between the two. There would be various permutations.
Yeah.
So the thing is, I would know, but nobody else would know. And the problem with codes is that if you use the same code every time, people start to recognize it.
Yes.
And they start to make the association. So I would try and change it frequently.
Oh, so you might not have
Initials.
the initials.
Correct.
But put in something else that in your mind represents that person.
Correct.
So whatever would come before the figure in the code, or let me first say, there would always be something that comes before the figure. Is that right?
That is correct.
Whatever you had before the figure was what, to your mind, represented the ultimate recipient.
That's correct.
And then there would be the figure. And then after the figure, whatever you had, or did you ever change the name of the person, the director, or the initials of the director, or any?
Sometimes, Chair, we change it, but not that often.
Okay, what you changed regularly was what represented the ultimate recipient before the figure.
Correct.
Okay, so when we look, we mustn't necessarily look for somebody's initials, because it
not
might
always.
It might
Mostly,
not be. It might be something else.
Sorry, Chair. Mostly,
yes,
but not always.
Not
Sometimes
always.
it would change.
Okay, all right. No, thank you very much. You may proceed then.
All right.
So you said the IMN represented in that first one?
Ishmael Mwaba.
That's one of the directors.
That's correct. These are mostly the correctional services people.
Yes, okay.
Okay, in number one.
Yes.
Before you go on
Yes.
to name other names, you say that triple M on page 361 represents Mollet Ngubo.
That's correct.
Ngubo. Next to his name in the code is the figure 50.
That's correct.
The figure in paragraph 34.3.7 is 15,000 rand.
That is correct.
There's an apparent discrepancy. Can you explain it?
Chair, I can explain the discrepancy. These figures as quoted here specifically relate to the initial amounts that were agreed in 2007 when T resigned.
And you say by
grown.
here you mean paragraph 34.3.
That is correct.
Right. And
the amount appearing in regard to Mr. Ngubo, you say reflects an amount that was paid later, not the amount that was paid initially.
Correct.
And after triple M, you've got 50. Does that represent 50,000 rand?
That is correct.
Okay. You may proceed.
are there any other names that you have listed in paragraph 34.3 that appear on any of these four lists to which we have referred?
If you look at the second one, it is MMB, and
Yes.
that was my code for Maria Mabena.
Yes.
30.
Continue, please.
If you look at MKB,
I'm sorry. Can we confirm that on that column, on the left-hand side of page 361 at the top, where the triple M appears, the person to take cash to the people, the intermediary, is the same person except what, the last two?
The last two are different people.
Yes, but the rest are
Yes.
the same person.
Correct, sir.
Yeah, that's Ishmael. You mentioned him just now?
Mwaba.
Yeah, okay, all right. Okay, then you may proceed.
Okay.
May I ask you a big favor,
Yes, sir.
please, Mr. Agrizzi? When you refer to an entry on a document, either in the text of your affidavit or in an annexure, just please place on record the page number or the paragraph number, so that the record, someone reading the record will find it easy to follow. Thank you.
Will do, Chair.
So we've dealt with Molet Ngubo and Maria Mabena. Are there any other names in the list on page 71 of your affidavit
Correct.
on any of the annexures?
If you have a look at page 70, paragraph 34.3, 34.3.4, Mkabela. If you have a look at, if you flip over to 361 on the annexures, and if you look at the next name, MKB 20 IMN. So that would refer to Mkabela.
Right, we've done 3 names. Are there any more?
Yes, there are. If you look at, while we're still on 361,
You still can't remember his name, eh?
I can't remember the first, it's a M. I think it starts with a M.
Okay, continue.
Right. SSS would be Shishi Matabela.
The SSS that appears on page 361
That is correct.
in the column in the top left-hand corner.
That's correct.
Yes. Go on, please.
There was then a payment to, if you look at KLA, that is Kloof Mine Amku Union. I'm just going, it doesn't appear because.
It doesn't appear.
No, but I'm going through the list.
Oh, but I think Mr. Pretorius wants you to, I don't know if he wants you to go through the whole list or only those in,
Well, for the moment,
to identify those in paragraph 34.
you're comparing the lists with the list of names in paragraph 34.3 of your affidavit.
Correct.
So perhaps, would you just tell the chair, please, if the remaining 3 names in paragraph 34.3 appear on any of these lists in code?
I will do. If you look at, I'm just trying to find, sorry, because Papa Leshabani would have done the delivery for Zach Modise. So I'm just finding it. If you go to 361,
Yes.
number 9 at the bottom on the right-hand side, you've got TMK.
Yes, you've,
Sorry. In paragraph, at page 361, we have at the top that column which has got triple M.
Correct.
Then there is a space before we get to another column,
Correct.
which seems to start with, I don't know whether it's JAC, and that's the second column. And then there is a space, there is a column of 2 names, then there's a space, there's another column.
Okay.
which column, which of the four columns must we look at?
All right. If you look at, you've got number 1 on top,
Yeah,
number 2, you've got number 3,
yeah,
you've got number 4. All right.
yeah.
You've got number 5, then you've got number 6, 7, 8, and 9.
Those are the numbers that have been encircled.
That is correct.
Right. You were telling us about the next name.
Okay.
Where is that to be found?
If you go to,
I'm sorry. Okay, I see there are numbers that are settled. I see 9. Is that the one? Is that the one we must look at for the next person?
that is correct.
Okay.
Okay. That code is totally different. All right. That is PLS, which stands for Papa Leshabane. That is the director.
Yes.
Okay, so this one's different, as I said earlier. That is 71. And it's got a code behind CCV.
Yeah.
That was a total amount that was given to Papa Leshabane. And from that amount, he would pay Zach Medise as well. And he was paying journalists and people from Lindela.
He was paying journalists as well.
Correct.
To do what?
Chair, to give information and to work with them.
Or including writing good stories about Bosasa?
Presumably, yes.
Okay. So,
So he would get a fixed amount. He would
Yeah.
get 71,000 Rand a month,
yeah,
and he would distribute it. And
Yeah.
of that money would go to Zach Medise, but we will get to Zach Medise a
Yeah.
bit later on,
okay.
because, so that was part of it.
What did CCV stand for?
CCV, it just stood for, it's a bulk amount for Papa Leshabane. So there were 2 bulk amounts. The one underneath that is for Tandi Makoko. And that was,
When you say the letters before a figure represent the initials of the ultimate recipient, it makes sense. When you say, I would change the initials and put in something else just so that the information doesn't get out, that still makes sense. Now, Shabane is not the ultimate recipient. He's, I call, intermediary, because he takes the money from you and he goes and pays.
that's correct.
Now, CCV, how did you decide on CCV?
Chair, if I had known that today what I know now, then when I know what I know now, I would have coded it perhaps using a standard code. But I think you must remember that this was done very clandestine. It was between me and Jacques van Zyl and the directors. And there was no need to follow a proper, secure system that you'd come back to.
So it was just an arbitrary.
It was arbitrary. It was
Oh,
it was a
okay.
code so that if ever Mr. Watson or Mr. Leshabane stood in the dock and they got asked what is JAC 30, they'd say, well, I don't know, it's just a number. That was the whole idea behind this.
Yeah.
But if you look at, I mean, even if I haven't looked at page 362 yet, but if we page over to the next one, or if we can go there, you'll see on that one there, it changed as well. So there, for instance, Ishmael Nwaba is coded IMC 50 MNG. And that was for, I know, it's for Mollet and Google.
Okay.
So it was a
It was
standard.
just an arbitrary.
It was
in regard
arbitrary.
to CCV.
And the reason was quite simply so nobody could actually point a finger, and unless you knew the code, you wouldn't be able to work it out.
Did you write somewhere to make sure you didn't forget the code? You have somewhere else to go and check in case you forgot. There were many people to be paid.
Yes. In my black book,
Yeah.
it actually has, some of them have codes, some have the full name.
Yes.
Because remember, the black book was kept in the vault in Gavin Watson's safe.
Yes.
And that was just there for him to check up on the book if he wanted to reconcile the cash.
So, but would it serve to help you remember in case you forgot
Yes.
what a particular code represented, who it represented, or what it represented? That's where you would go in case you forgot.
Correct. And Chair, one thing I must tell you is that after a while, doing the same thing repetitively, you start to remember people and the amounts. You link people and the amounts. So,
No. I think the amounts would be easy because for a long time it would be the same amounts, isn't it?
Correct.
There would maybe some change, but for a long time it would be the same amounts. And where you used initials and you used them for quite a long time, you would remember. But I was just thinking that you didn't want the risk that you might forget and have nowhere else to check. But you say your black book would have helped you.
correct. And also, you must bear in mind the codes. I use mind maps in my head to remember things, and the codes I would associate with people. So, for instance, there's one person I know has glasses because he wears very thick glasses. So his code would be GLS. That's how I would work it out.
Okay.
And it was a unique system that I needed to apply, Chair, in doing this. And if
Yes.
anybody asked me at the time, who is GJM? That's Joe Gumedi. And how do I get to that? Well, it's Joe Gumedi. So the G and the M. That's how I memorized it.
No, thank you. You may proceed.
And I think, Chair, why, and I'm sorry, but I think why I'm actually mentioning, if you look at the bottom of the page
At 361?
at 361, that is not my handwriting. That is the handwriting of Jacques van Zyl.
You're talking about the signature now
Not the signature, the actual handwriting.
of the whole page.
Yes, correct.
Oh,
So he would have totaled it for me. So he would have said CCV 1686, so it was 1.6 million DCT. That would be the code to say to me it's packed and it's in the bag.
and would,
Sorry, if I may just interrupt, Chair,
Yes.
to correct before
Yes.
it slips my mind. The Chair asked you, is it someone else's handwriting on the whole of page 361? You said yes.
No. Sorry, Chair. The handwriting on 361 is my handwriting, except for the bottom. You'll see the handwriting's totally different.
the codes are written in your handwriting, is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
All the codes on this page.
That is correct.
And there is a signature on the bottom right-hand corner.
Yes.
Is that your signature?
Chair, no. That is the signature of the person that witnessed or attested to and commissioned this document.
Yes. And then just above that signature, there is it's written CCV 1686. I don't know if it's 0CJ or CT. Whose writing is that?
That is Jacques van Zyl. That is Jacques van Zyl's handwriting.
Same person who signed as well?
No, sir.
Or who signed?
The signature was signed by Commissioner of Oaths. The signature.
Oh, that signature is a
Correct.
commissioner of
It's totally
Oaths.
separate.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Not a problem.
Okay, all right.
And if you have a look at it, in my total there, I would put there CCV 1986 DCT, and it was confirmed what was actually packed at the bottom, CCV 1686 DCT. So in other words, he only packed that amount for me. There were certain things that weren't packed, and he hasn't double-ticked them.
Okay.
Okay, does it make a bit more sense?
Thank you.
All right,
Thank
Chair.
you. No, I understand, yeah.
Has that clarified, Advocate Pretorius?
Mr. Pretorius.
Perhaps you should just establish clearly, Mr. Agrizzi, on page 361,
Yes.
any entry in a handwriting other than yours, apart
Yes.
from the Commissioner of Oaths initials.
Next to the Commissioner of Oaths initials is handwritten note there CCV 1686 DCT, and that is from Jacques van Zyl.
So that's the only handwriting other than yours that was made at the time this list was compiled.
That is correct, Chair.
Okay, let's get back to paragraph 34, please. There are two names you haven't mentioned as appearing in code on the lists. Can you help the chair there, please?
If I recall correctly, the two names that don't appear are Zach Modise.
No, you've told us about Zach Medise.
Okay. So, could you, sorry,
No,
just
but
refresh.
let me understand what the position is with him. Are you saying that his name, or he's not, there's no code in these lists that represent him?
On 361.
On any of the pages where you have got those, is it 4 lists? Are you saying that he's not represented, or are you saying he is represented?
He is represented in the Le Shabane total, the 7-1.
Oh, okay,
You
yeah, I
understand?
remember. So you said a certain amount would be given to Le Shabane,
That's correct.
and among other people, he would give part of that money to Zach Modise
On that specific list on
on
361.
that specific list, yeah.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Have
Well-
you dealt with Josiah Mako?
Yes, I do think we have, haven't we?
I don't remember that
We haven't dealt with two people on this list.
Could you just tell me
In
which
relation,
one?
two people on the list in 34.3 in relation
Yes.
to the lists.
Yes.
Those are Mr. Josiah Marco and Ms. Dikeledi Chabalala. Do their initials or codes or names or references appear on any of these lists?
Yes, they do. If you have a look at the attached list, JM, at
Is
the
that on
bottom.
page, still on page 361?
That's right,
Okay,
under paragraph 1,
yeah,
JM, 15.
yes. The last name on the top column on the left on page 361.
That's right,
Okay,
15.
yes.
And to answer the question about Mrs. Chabalala, is that by 2016 she had left the department and therefore wasn't entitled to getting a bribe.
So, a code representing her appears here, but she did not get any amount
she
on
was
this
not there.
occasion because she was no longer in the department.
That is correct.
Okay, so the 15 represents what?
The 15 was 15,000.
Or which she would have got if she was still in the department.
Correct.
Okay,
The 20, K20, KZO,
I'm sorry, I'm getting lost here. Did you say that was Dikeledi Shabalala?
yes, she wasn't at the department in 2016.
Okay,
She had left to go to the Department of Education.
okay.
Would there be a prior list with her name on?
Yes,
You haven't got that list in these annexures.
I'll go through them again, but as far as these are all the lists I had.
Right. Now, you're still on page 361, and you were telling the chair about
Correct.
another entry.
Correct. The other entry is,
So before that, would you have put her code on this list at page 361 on this occasion on the basis that she was one of those who were receiving monthly payments?
correct, Chair.
That's the reason why you put her code here,
That is correct.
and then you discovered she was no longer in the department.
No, when it started, Chair, in 2007, she was in the department. I think she only left the department in 2014 or 2015. So her name would have been on the list right until she left.
Yeah, okay.
So
Yeah.
otherwise, I mean,
No, what I was suggesting is that when you put the list, as I understand the position, before you gave it to whoever, you would have put her name because you didn't know or you had not been told that she was no longer in the department. And then
No,
you discovered after.
the list on paragraph 34.3 reflects the lists. If you look at it, they made payments on a monthly basis shortly after Mti's resignation until approximately end of 2016.
Yeah, no,
so
we
that
are
was the
talking
initial list.
We are talking at cross purposes.
Okay.
I'm talking about the list at 361.
Yes.
I'm saying to you, you put her code here.
That's correct.
As I understand it, what you were doing, you were putting a list of people who should be paid.
Correct.
And you were doing so on the 25th of February 2016. Is that right?
That is correct.
And you would only have put her code if you thought she was still entitled to be paid.
Correct. And we would
But
only pack the money
But
if she was there.
you discovered that she was no longer there,
That's correct,
and
Chair.
then she was not paid.
That is correct, Chair.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Well, if you go back to her initials or code on page 361, you will see the letters JM at the bottom of column 1 and -15, but there's no third code as would exist. Can you explain why that is?
Probably because somebody interrupted me or I was busy and I just didn't put anything there. That's just an error. I think I must just reiterate that this piece of paper was only between 3 people. It was myself, Jacques van Zyl, and Gavin Watson. Jacques van Zyl would do the packing, Gavin Watson would do the deciding and whom needs to be paid, and I would do the verification and the discussions with the directors. So
Okay.
that's how it worked. This
Yeah.
paper was never supposed to be, this just by chance.
Yeah.
If you look at it, was in a packet in my briefcase when I'd left. So it was never ever compiled to be able to prove anything.
The final name in paragraph 34.3.5, does that appear in code or otherwise on any of the lists?
That's Josiah Marco, is that right?
No. We've dealt with Josiah Marco, Chair, Dikeledi Chabalala.
I thought the one we were dealing with just now was Dikeledi Chabalala.
Yes, we finished dealing with him, Chair.
Yes.
That's JM15. That's the person who'd left.
Yes. But what I'm saying is, okay, let me ask the witness. The person we were dealing with,
Yes.
that you said you found out had left correctional services,
Correct.
was it Dikeledi Chabalala?
That is correct.
Is that the person who is represented by the code JM-15
That's not the
at
person.
361?
Chair, that's not the person.
That's
The
not the
person
person.
represented by JM is in fact Josiah Marco.
Oh, okay, I misunderstood.
Okay.
Okay, I misunderstood.
So sometimes we would have to give a little bit extra to a person, and you would then add in a person. For instance, there were often requests that I need to buy something to build my house finished, and I have to pay them for the roof an amount of 80,000 Rand. I only get 50,000 Rand. Can you advance me 30,000 Rand? And we used to do that. So
Okay.
that's possibly why, there's no number behind that 15. It was probably an advance, an extra advance as well.
Oh,
That's
okay.
the only explanation. If I'd known that today would come, I would have maybe been more methodical
Yeah.
in my approach. But the reason for my vagueness on these documents is purely because of the secrecy that went with
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank
The
you,
purpose
Chair.
of my questioning, just to assist Mr. Agrizzi, is just to ask whether the names listed in paragraph 34.3 appear in code or otherwise on your lists. You've given an explanation now in respect of all of them. The final 2 persons we have dealt with, Josiah Marco, you say is indeed listed in code on page 361, correct?
Correct.
And the final person that we dealt with in this list, Ms. Dikeledi Chabalala, I understand is not on these lists, and your explanation is that by the time these lists were being compiled, she had left the Department of Correctional Services.
That is correct.
If we could go then to paragraph 34.4.5, and that is where we left off yesterday. I'm not sure that you may not be repeating yourself, but in relation to the process followed and the system implemented, just take the chair through what you say in paragraph 34.4.5 and following regarding that system.
Correct. 34.4, starting off at when the whole background on the...
Well, he did explain it
Yeah.
yesterday, unless you just want to refresh memory, he did explain it yesterday.
Just to place this current evidence in its context so that it is understood,
Yeah.
I'd like him, Chair, just to go from paragraph 34.4.5. Just explain to the Chair the process in the paragraphs 34.4.5 and 34.4.6.
Chair, it might be easier for me because here I talk from off the cuff. Is
Yes,
it easier
you may do that, yeah.
to
You
go
may do
from 30, right from the beginning, 34
No,
point...
we've dealt with the beginning.
Okay.
In other words, how you received the instructions and what you would do after receiving the instructions. You've made that clear. You then said in evidence yesterday, you compiled a list of who needed to be paid and what amounts, and you got Gavin Watson's final approval for those payments.
That's correct.
Now you've told the Chair about those lists, and all I want to do very briefly is say what happened after that.
Chair, what I would do then is I would compile those lists as you saw in 361 and 362, and I would then give it either by hand or if I didn't have the book with me, the paper with me, because you'll see everything's written on blue paper and in fountain pen in my purple fountain pen. I would then give that to Jacques van Zyl or email him the list if I wasn't in town, and I would code it. I would then give it to him, he would then prepare it, he would pack it, he would then give me it back with a total amount that he would write on the bottom of the list, as you saw in 361, and I would then take that and call the relevant director that had to pick it up and say, your stuff is ready, when are you coming to fetch it? And it would be in the company secretary's safe, in the two safes which you saw on the video, which are opened up initially. It would be kept in there, and as they would come, I would tick it off that they had received it and taken it. That's how it would actually work. Is that sufficient for you, Chair?
Mr. Pretorius will ask you more if he wants further clarification.
Thank you, Chair.
Earlier on, you said or understood you to say that the code would be known to you and Mr. Gavin Watson, is that right? Or not really?
No.
It would be known to you and, is it Jacques van Zyl?
No.
The code would be known to you only?
Correct, and it would be known to the person I'm handing it to, because I would tell them
yes.
that this is for that person.
Yes. Okay.
Sometimes it would help them. Sometimes, like Ishmael needed a bit of help, I would write down the code and I would write down the person on a piece, a post-it or something, and give it to him like that.
Okay, thank you.
We've dealt with the lists, Mr. Agrizzi, at page 359 and 361. There are two further lists at page 363 and 365 of Exhibit S1. Is there anything in those lists that is relevant to the evidence you've just given? Just take a look at them, please.
Well,
363 and 365.
Yes, I can tell you exactly whose names are on the list here. Would you like me to go through it?
No, insofar as they coincide with the lists that you've referred to in 34.3.1.
Yes. Some of them, they do coincide. Some of them, I'll give you an example. IMC, if you look at 363, Chair.
Second column, IMC.
Second column,
Yes.
I've put in IMC 50, SHR, that was Shishima Tabela. Ishmael Nwaba collected it. It was 50,000 rand.
Who is IMC?
Ishmael Nwaba.
Mr. Pretorius,
And that's a bulk amount.
Mr. Pretorius, I wonder whether it wouldn't be convenient with regard to these lists for us to write numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, up to whatever, so that when he refers to any particular code, he can say the code at number 2, number 6, or whatever. Then it will be easier to find, because although some are legible, others are not so legible. I haven't identified the one, the IMC that he's talking about. Would that not help, or would that confuse things?
On page 363, there are 2 columns, and IMC appears at the top of the 2nd column. Is that correct?
That is correct.
IMC, you say, is who?
Ishmael Nwaba. So I would, Chair,
Is
But I'm-
IMC, at the top, that page 363 has got there are 4 columns, or 2 columns at the top, 2 in the middle, and maybe there's 1 or at the bottom. The IMC, is it the one on the right-hand column at the top, at the beginning,
that is correct, Chair.
where there is the figure 50 between the IMC and MNG, it appears, and then 100?
Yes,
Okay, that's the IMC.
that is correct.
Okay.
Chair, if I may just wrap this up for the purposes of the evidence the legal team would like to lead in any event. I don't want to interrupt you unduly, but all I want to know from our part is whether the names in paragraph 34.3 appear in addition on page 363 and 365, and you can answer a yes or no.
They do, yes.
I'll leave the rest to you, Chair.
You know what we could do to facilitate this is that maybe the witness could, in his own time, later, prepare a piece of paper that can be inserted immediately after a list, which would have the codes as they appear in the list and the actual names, so that if later on one wants to see who a particular code represented, there's something that can help. Like you see at 363, you have a certain list. So if there could be a page maybe marked 363A that explains the codes on 363, that
That would
could
be
help.
easy to do, Chair.
That would be easy to do, Mr. Pretorius?
We'll decode the lists.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah. Okay, all right.
Then in paragraph 35, you continue to speak of the delivery system in regard to payments to Department of Correctional Services. Explain the process that you refer to in paragraph 34.5, or the part of the process you refer to in paragraph 34.5.
He had covered 34.6, the resignation of Gillingham. I think he had, but I don't know whether I'm just remembering that from reading his affidavit ahead of him testifying.
Did you mention the name of Mr. Siapela now?
No, I have not yet
Well,
gone
then
through
please-
that.
deal with 34.5, not
Yeah.
34.6.
Yeah, okay.
34.5, on the instruction of Gavin Watson, I would deliver to Siapela payments which would be handed over to officials from the Department of Correctional Services, according to Siapela, which included senior government officials.
Now,
What
what time was this?
This was from 2009, 2010.
I'm sorry I interrupted you.
Sorry. So what would happen, Chair, is on a monthly basis, there would be special payments. As I alluded to earlier yesterday, there was the increase from 500 to 750,000, and there was certain officials that would be handled in a group with Mr. Siopela, and he would collect the money to handle them.
In respect of correctional services officials?
Mostly, yes.
Mostly, okay.
Yes.
All right.
So the system in 34.5 is another system other than that in 34.4.
That is correct.
Then 34.6, would you deal with that, please?
Well, Gillingham had to resign from the Department of Correctional Services, and there was a reason for that, that the evidence against him would have been too much, and it would be better if he resigned, because then they wouldn't have been able to lay claim on his pension fund. So he resigned from the Department of Correctional Services in November 2010 after he'd been suspended. I think he was suspended for 2 years.
What brought about his resignation? What had happened? Had he been discovered or what?
Well, he'd been charged. He had actually been charged based on the SIU report.
Oh,
So he was charged by the department, and he was to appear before disciplinary committee. And at that stage, they used the state advocates to handle the matter.
yes.
We, as Bosasa, we were assisting him by utilizing BDK attorney. Sorry, I shouldn't have mentioned the name. But we were using a group of attorneys to assist him in defending the case. The day he appeared before the case, I got a call from Siopela to say that Gillingham has just resigned.
Yes.
And he just resigned, and that's when he came back to us and he said, look, now what? I need to get my salary because I'm not going to get a salary anymore. And that's when Gavin Watson agreed that he would increase his salary, double it up, because he was getting 47,000 Rand a month. He would double it up and pay for small incidentals like his medical aid and his pension fund. So it went up to 110,000 Rand a month.
And by the time you left Bosasa, he was still being paid that amount?
Correct. In the video clip you see that he actually says to Andres, he says to him, pay, you will take the money to Patrick Gillingham. Because at that stage, I just refused point blank.
Was the idea, if you know what the position is, was the idea that he would continue to be paid by Bosasa like this after having resigned from correctional services, what, for life or for what?
As long as Bosasa had the catering contracts, the senior members that were involved in arranging those contracts would be paid for life, as long as the contract was in place.
Or they would be paid as long as the catering contract was still in place.
That is correct, Chair.
If it came to an end, then the payments would stop as well.
Apparently that is what the arrangement was.
Yeah.
I didn't know about the arrangement right from the
Yes.
onset.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, let's move on then, please, to paragraph 35. You say here that during approximately 2009, 2010, you accompanied Gavin Watson to a meeting with Mr. Mti. Where did this meeting take place?
This meeting, as far as I can recall, took place at Richmond Mt's house in Savannah Hills.
What was discussed? Who attended this meeting?
I was at the meeting, Gavin Watson was at the meeting, Richmond MT was at the meeting.
What was discussed?
What was basically discussed, it was an informal discussion regarding to the investigation in Bosasa. Richmond MT wanted to know what we were doing and how we were active, and wanted to create an alliance and formulate the way forward on how to handle this investigation.
Is this the SIU investigation?
Correct. And the potential criminal charges at that stage.
Yes.
Can I continue?
Please do.
Was your understanding that this meeting marked the commencement of discussions about involving Mr. MT, about how the SIU investigation should be handled? Or was the position that this was just a follow-up discussions? There had been discussions before?
There had been discussions before, and
Yes.
this was kind of a follow-up discussion on discussing what was out in the press, number one, and number two, what was happening within the NPA. And then they would always go on about political ramblings and that as well. But the fact of the matter is, it was a monthly type scheduled meeting that I had suddenly become involved with as well.
Okay, thank you.
MT was very well aware of the investigation, Chair. And he suggested that we need to pay certain or sort out certain individuals within the NPA so that we could curry favor, and also that they could assist us in telling us where and when to send lawyers' letters, that type of thing, and on what basis to send it. So there was a lot of documentation as well that came from Mr. MT after he had met with the various people. The important thing was that he told us we needed to make up packages for certain people. That was made very clear to me by Watson and by MT that it needed to be done, and needed to be done urgently.
At that particular meeting, to which you're now referring in paragraph 35.1, did Mr. MT mention any names?
Yes, he did.
What were those names?
The names, Chair, were Jackie Lepinka, who had used to work for him previously as his secretary and was now working for Advocate Nomkoba Jiba. He mentioned Lawrence Mrebi, and that they were handling the investigation at the NPA.
Right, continue please with your evidence at paragraph 35.2.
So those three names that you have mentioned, were they the names, or were they some of the names that he said Bosasa must be ready to pay them?
Chair, I was told to prepare money by Gavin Watson for those three names. And the names and the amounts were decided by Mr. MT and Gavin Watson. They had a private discussion about it. I was just told afterwards, this is what needs to get paid.
Or the actual amounts were not mentioned at the meeting you are telling us about?
The meeting, I walked out, and the meeting to discuss his amounts, I was told in the car on the way back that this is what has been agreed between the two, and that's what needs to be paid.
Okay.
After that meeting, Chair, it would be openly discussed, what each one was getting. But the decision discussions, I was outside at the moment while they decided on the initial amounts.
So the outcome of the meeting you are telling us about, which you, Mr. Gavin Watson, and Mr. MT attended, was that certain officials at the NPA should be paid money so that they could do certain things for Bosasa, to assist them with the investigation, the SIU investigation, and possible criminal charges.
That is true. It wasn't the SIU investigation. It was the Hawks investigation and the NPA's dealings. Yes.
Or it was lots of
Correct.
anything connected with those law enforcement agencies.
That is correct.
Were there other people other than these three that you were told about at this meeting that needed to be paid money by Bosasa? At that meeting, not after?
Not at this meeting, no.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Let's just summarize then what you have said in paragraph 35.1. You went with Gavin Watson to a meeting with MT at his house.
Correct.
A discussion ensued at that meeting in regard to law enforcement agencies' investigations into Bosasa
That is
and
correct.
into MT himself.
That is correct.
Mr. MT then suggested that certain individuals had to be, in your words, sorted out.
That is correct.
And he mentioned certain individuals in the NPA.
That is correct.
And the names mentioned were Jackie Lepinka, Nonkobo Jiba, and Lawrence Mkhwebi.
That is correct, Chair.
Now, was the decision in relation to who and in what amount, and I'm talking about the sorting out of individuals, then finalized in your absence?
I was not there when they decided the amounts. That is correct.
But you were told that by Mr. Watson.
That is correct.
Right. Then please, would you continue? And was this decision executed?
Yes, most definitely, Chair.
And in paragraph 35.2, you describe how the decision was executed.
Before that, I see that in paragraph 35.1 of your affidavit, the words "sought out" are in quotes. That
Yes.
could mean they are your words, but you put them in quotes for certain reasons, but they could mean that Mr. MT used those words and that's why you are quoting them. Which is which?
Chair, you are correct. That was the words used by Gavin Watson, sought out. So everybody adopted that, sought out.
Oh.
He would, that
Or
was
they
his
were
words.
used by Mr. Gavin
Yes, that's
Watson?
why I've put in inverted
Oh,
commas.
not by Mr. MT?
No, it was
Yeah,
used by
okay,
Mr.
all right.
Gavin Watson.
Thank you.
Well, you do say in paragraph 35.1 that he, and in the context that's MT, suggested to us that we have to, quote, sort out, unquote, certain individuals in NPA.
Those were the words used.
By whom?
What I'm trying to explain, Chair, is that if Gavin says we've got to sort someone out, then MT would say we've got to sort someone out. So that was the words used by MT, by Gavin, by myself, when somebody needed to get paid cash.
Let's go on then to paragraph 35.2. You say the decisions made, in whatever words were used, were executed.
That is correct.
How were they executed?
Well, if I can go through 35.2 and it explains it, they were given cash basically, but MT would tell us that he met weekly with the persons whom he gave code names to. So he gave each person a code name so that they wouldn't be compromised. So he called Nkobo Jiba Snake because she was very alert, and the reason why, when I asked him, is because she was always poised to strike and ready to be on the offensive all the time, and she was poison. Then he referred to Jackie.
I'm sorry, did you say he said she was poison?
She was like poison, potent, strong.
Okay, okay.
So then he used the name Jay for Jackie. He just called her Jay.
That is Jackie
Lepinka. That's correct.
Okay.
Then he used the word snail for Lawrence Mkhwebi because he said he was slow and his words to me was very lethargic. He won't get anything done, but he's there. So I'm not being facetious. I'm telling you why he used those code names and what he explained to me.
Yes, okay.
So it was snake for Nonkobo Jiba, snail for Mkhwebi, and J for Jackie.
Okay.
Okay. So at these meetings, they would provide him with detailed statuses of the investigation and the prosecution. Now, one thing I must mention, Chair, for clarity purposes, is that he never ever mentioned that Mrebi was at the meeting. He mentioned the ladies were with me.
Oh, that's
on the
how we put it.
telephone. So on the telephone, he would say to me, the ladies were with me. Referencing, because one day I asked him, he said the reference was to Jackie and to, well, Jay and Snake. Were with him.
Okay.
So Jackie and Nkoba Jiba was with him. That's what he told me.
Yes.
And that's what he told Watson. And they would then give us updates, very accurate updates, because two lots of updates would come to us. And one update was from him, and it was always accurate. And basically, in return for that, they received the cash on a monthly basis. So that's how it worked.
Yeah.
And this went on since, I think it was 2010.
Yes. Well,
What are the amounts, to your knowledge, that were paid?
Snake would get 100,000 rand
Per what?
per month.
Right?
Jay would get 20,000 rand per month. And Snail would get 10,000 rand per month. That's the amounts that would pay.
did you ever get to know why Jay, as I understand in Miss Lepinka, Jackie Lepinka, who, as I understand your evidence or what you were told by Mr. MT, was secretary or PA to Ms. Nomgcobo Jiba, was getting more than Mr. Mhwebi?
Chair,
I see she was getting 20,000 rand and Mr. Mhwebi was getting 10,000 rand.
I asked the same question, and the answer that was given to me is that she's far more active than him. And she's far more important than him, because as long as he got his 10,000 rand a month, he was happy, he was calm, and he wouldn't interfere in anything. He would let Jiba run with it.
Okay.
That's the answer I got.
Okay. Thank you.
Right. And do you personally know of the delivery of these amounts, or were you told of the delivery of these amounts?
Chair, I just want to clarify, I did some of these deliveries a month to MT. That explains it, I think. I know about every single delivery that took place. The last lot of deliveries which took place in December, I actually refused to do. And Gavin
That is December 2016.
2016, correct. I refused to do them. I had the packages with me, and I just said, that's it, I'm not doing this anymore. And that was on the 15th of December, sorry, on the 19th of December 2016. I then fell ill, and when I came out of hospital eventually, Gavin Watson came to fetch that delivery, the last delivery for MT, Snake, Jay, and Snail.
Did the three start to be paid only after the meeting that you have told us about? Prior to that, were they not being paid?
With the exception of MT. But the others, the three, did not get paid before the meeting, no. The meeting suggested that they be paid.
Yes. And are you able to place the meeting in terms of time? Was it 2009, 2010? I think, was it thereabouts?
You know, Chair, when I left, everything was taken away. My books, everything. So I can't.
You can't say when. Okay. No, I just see in your paragraph 35.1 of your affidavit, you say, it says during our approximately 2009-2010, I accompanied Gavin Watson to a meeting with MT at his house. So that's the best you can say.
Chair, that's, you know, I'd met MT before at his house, but that was when this was discussed.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The question that I raised with you last in relation to deliveries let me make it more clear. Were you ever present when a delivery was made to either of the three persons in the NPA?
I was not at the delivery to the three persons at the MPA, Chair.
Did Mr. Gillingham, then in paragraph 35.3, you say these amounts were paid and received on a monthly basis. That information would be information received from MT.
That is correct.
Then in paragraph 35.4, you mention the name of Mr. Gillingham. Please tell the Chair what transpired.
Well, at one stage, because of all the stories with the NPA and that, Gillingham was extremely anxious about these arrangements that were going on there. And he was concerned about the NPA processes and that. And what he did was I actually got to a stage where I didn't want to talk to him because he was so nervous, and I actually asked Gavin Watson to speak to him, that said to him, and he told him he's got everything under control, and he explained that he had personally spoken to everybody. He was with MT at the moment, and everything, the NPA was under control, everything was sorted out. That's what that reflects.
So going back to the question Mr. Pretorius asked you just before this one that you have answered, the position would be that you yourself do not have personal knowledge whether or not the three, namely Ms. Nomkobo Chiba, Ms. Jackie Lepinka, and Mr. Mhwebi, whether they actually received any amounts from Bosasa, but what you know is that amounts were delivered to Mr. MT, and that the purpose for the delivery of those amounts was that they would be passed on to the three. And that Mr. MT told you that they were being passed on.
That is correct, Chair. And how I knew that they were receiving it was because MT would tell me that.
Yes.
And also, he had given me documents from them directly. So because I had that information, I trusted him. And I trusted that he wouldn't lie.
Yeah.
Well, in relation to the product of these payments, we'll deal with them after the short adjournment. But as you say, you received documents purportedly emanating from the NPA working files.
That's correct.
Containing information that could only on the face of it have come from the NPA.
That is correct, Chair.
Those documents were given to you by MT.
That is correct, Chair.
And he told you he received these documents from within the NPA.
That is correct, Chair.
We'll deal with those after the break.
If I may also add, Chair, he would often phone them in my presence. So I would hear him talking to them.
Yes.
And there's one incident where we were actually discussing the matter, and there's handwritten notes where he was on the line and he was busy writing down notes as well. So that is submitted as well.
Yes, okay, all right. We'll take the tea adjournment.
Chair, you were aware then that there's no water, and in fact the bathrooms have been locked. So
I was told yesterday that there were temporary bathrooms provided. Are those no longer available?
I'm not sure of those. I think they are outside, I'm not sure.
Well, there seems to be an indication that they are available. So if that is the case, is there a need for a 30 minutes break, or should we keep to 15 minutes?
In your hands, Chair.
Well, I don't want
15 minutes should be
adequate.
Except, the lifts and the numbers, perhaps.
Okay.
20
so maybe 20?
Minutes. 25 minutes.
25 minutes.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Legal team drives a hard bargain.
Well, let's say, how is 20 minutes?
Fine, Chair. Absolutely fine.
No. Okay. If we say 20 to 12, it will give you 25 minutes. It will give you 25 minutes.
Thank you, Chair.
25. We'll resume at 25 to 12. We adjourn.
All right. legal teams have been granular. You said it from the beginning. I've highlighted some pages. Yeah.
Okay, has Tanvi got a copy of that?
No, we only got this one. Maybe I should just write some of them customer complaints. And then she'll maybe they could make an
Tanvi should.
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Pretorius.
Mr. Agrizzi, we were at point 4 of your affidavit, and you were telling the chair about the intervention of Mr. Gillingham in respect of the arrangements regarding personnel at the NPA.
Correct.
In paragraph 35.5, you deal with the contents of a meeting or another meeting after Mr. Gillingham had raised his concerns. What happened after Mr. Gillingham had raised his concerns?
When Mr. Gillingham raised his concerns, there was a discussion on the telephone between Richmond MT and Gillingham in my presence, where he told him not to be concerned, that he has it all under control, that he was dealing with Jiba, he was dealing with Jackie and Mrebi.
Did you receive an instruction from Gavin Watson at this time?
Yes, I did, Chair.
What was that instruction?
The instruction was from Watson to take MT's cash earmarked for him, as well as the cash delivered to a number of other officials, as was done on a monthly basis. Gavin Watson informed me that I was to take extra cash for the people at the NPA. He explained to me that he had already packed the security bags for Nonkoba Jiba in the amount of 100,000 Rand, and he marked it Snake. Lawrence Mrebi in the amount of 10,000 Rand, and he marked it Snail. This would be marked with a Sharpie marking pen on the bag itself. And Jackie in the amount of 20,000 Rand and marked it J.
I'm sorry I interrupted you. What did you do with these bags?
I took these bags together with the other bags to MT. And these were added to the regular monthly payments made to MT. The complete bag, which was a haversack with the bags inside it, included the following amounts. MT was 65,000 Rand, packed in a grey security. All these are packed separately in a grey security bag.
Sorry, may I
labelled.
stop you there, please? Chair, I note that the broadcast feed has died, and I was told by sign language that it's been cut somehow. It is important that this information is properly publicized if it's going to be given in evidence as before.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Maybe we need a short adjournment for the technicians to sort this out. Is there a technician who knows how long this will take? Yeah, I think maybe find out from him.
It's back on, Chair.
Oh, okay. Well, whatever may be done to make sure it doesn't come back, please do that. Thank you.
Chair. All right. Would you go back, please, and start that section of your evidence again?
From the Gillingham call.
No, you can continue.
Well, he was given instructions by Mr. Gavin Watson. Was that part of what the instruction was captured on? Do we know?
I think we can start, Chair, because we did repeat a little of the evidence
Yes.
with the instructions
Yeah.
given by Mr. Watson
Yes.
to Mr. Agrizzi.
Yes, okay.
Chair Watson instructed me to take MT cash that had been earmarked for him, as well as cash to be delivered to a number of other officials, which was done on a monthly basis. Gavin informed me that I was to take the extra cash for the people at the NPA as well. He explained to me that he had packed security bags. He packed them in a large haversack, plastic haversack, which we'd buy in bulk from the China Mall. And he would say, he said to me that he had packed the security bags for Nonkoba Jiba in 100,000 Rand. He had packed the grey security bag inside the main bag for Mr. Lawrence Mrebi, and he marked it Snail, and he packed the bag for Jackie Lepinka and marked it J. The amounts that were packed were
And the one for Mr. Nomgcobo Chiba, he said he marked it what?
100,000 rand, and he marked it for Snake.
Okay.
He marked Mrebi's 10,000 rand as Snail and Jackie as J. I took these bags together with the other bags to Mti. So it was all in one bag, all delivered to Mti.
So how many bags were inside the bigger sack that you told?
Well, there
about?
were six bags inside it.
Okay.
Okay. There were extra bags. One was for Jolingana, who was at that stage the acting commissioner of correctional services. He also referred to as Middledrift. The code name for her was Middledrift.
Middledrift.
Middledrift, because apparently she came from that area in the Eastern Cape.
Oh. So he was the acting national commissioner,
She was.
or she? Or it was a she.
Yes, that's
Okay.
right.
All right.
She was the acting national commissioner. If
And was Jolingana the surname or the name?
I don't know, I
You
just
don't
know it's Jolingana. I think it was a surname,
Okay. All right.
all right? But the code name for her was Middledrift, I just recalled now. Then for Grace Molatedi, who was the area commissioner for somewhere in the Free State. And the reason why that was because they had further extended the contract by an additional 2 contracts. One of them was Groenprint, and there was, I remember the other ones, it's further on in my statement. But she would get 50,000 rand because she extended the contract. There'd been a fire at one of the facilities, and they'd asked us to take over and put in a mobile kitchen.
Oh, so that strictly speaking would have been an expansion of the scope of the contract
Correct.
as opposed to an extension of the duration.
Correct.
right?
I haven't,
Yeah.
I haven't gone into detail with the investigators, but
Yeah.
we had such little time to prepare.
No, that's fine.
So Grace Molatedi would be getting an extra 100,000 rand as well. Then, in execution of this arrangement, MT, over a period of time, supplied me with documents which indicate...
Before you go there, please, just let's clarify. You say there were 3 extra bags,
Correct,
one for a person with a surname Jolingana.
correct.
We've mentioned someone earlier, I'm told, Nonsikalelo.
That is the lady.
Is that her
is
first
correct.
name?
That is correct.
You referred to her earlier in your evidence.
That is correct.
How much did she receive?
She
according to
received
your evidence?
100,000 rand.
All right. Would you just wait for my question to finish so that the record can pick it up, please? And then the third amount?
The third amount was Grace Molatedi, which was 100,000 rand.
All right. Then let's get the order straight. The first amount?
First amount was for Richmond MT, which was his standard, 65,000 rand a month.
And this is now after MT had left correctional services.
That is correct, Chair.
Yes. When he was still at correctional services, he was getting more than 65,000 rand, or not really?
No, Chair, the amount that he would get monthly was 65,000 rand.
Oh,
Later on, after this, it increases to 85,000 rand, because then the company started paying his rental deposit, his rental fee of 20,000 rand a month in
Okay,
cash.
thank you.
To summarize thus far then, arrangements were made to pay certain amounts to officials in the National Prosecuting Authority.
That is correct.
Your evidence is that these arrangements were executed in the manner in which you've just described.
That is correct.
The purpose, as I understand, was to obtain information regarding the process of investigation and contemplated prosecution of Mti himself and Bosasa as well.
That is correct, Chair.
But as I understood you, it was more than obtaining information. from the NPA. It included them, I think you said, assisting Bosasa, and I would imagine taking whatever decisions were necessary to assist Bosasa with regard to the investigation.
That is correct, Chair. The purpose was also to get them to stymie the process.
In relation to the first purpose, did it produce any results for Bosasa?
Well, most definitely.
All right. You deal with that in paragraph 35.6 of your
Correct.
affidavit, and I'm going to take you through the contents of annexure Q, that is Q1 to Q17. Q1 appears at page 366 of bundle S1. But before we go there, let's just forewarn the chair of what this evidence is all about. You say in the introductory portion of paragraph 35.6 that the arrangement relating to the payment of money to officials in the National Prosecuting Authority had various goals. And you say in paragraph 35.6, in execution of this arrangement, MT did various things. What did he do?
He liaised with the NPA people to get information from them and provide us with the information relating to that.
Did you receive information?
Yes, we did.
In what form did you receive the information?
Information would be verbal, it would be written, it'll be copies of secret documentation, minutes of meetings, various other information sources.
To whom was this information given?
The information was given to Gavin Watson and then to myself, or sometimes, occasionally, I would be there with Gavin Watson and it would be handed over to me.
The documents to which you've just referred and which we will refer to in a moment, to whom were they given?
Sorry, I thought I explained that. Could you just repeat that in what context?
We spoke
Yeah,
about
well,
information.
Yes.
I'm now referring particularly to
Oh,
documents.
documents, okay.
And the documents in annexure Q.
Yes, those documents, sorry, Chair.
Yeah, how did those documents get to you?
Those documents were given presumably by the people within the NPA to MT. MT would give them to Watson normally, or if I was there, he would give them to Watson and myself at the same time.
Okay.
Now, we'll go through the documents one by one in order to identify them and to consider, or for the chair to consider their probable source, and to consider whether that is consistent with the evidence that you're giving.
Correct.
But the documents in annexure Q, you know what those documents are because you gave them to the investigators.
That is correct.
How did you come into possession of those particular documents?
Those documents in Q were given to me via Richmond MT.
When you say via, by whom were they given to you?
Well, they were given to me by either Gavin Watson or Richmond MT directly, Chair. I can't remember each document. I need to go and look at it and try and jog my memory. But they were given to me by Gavin Watson, who got them from Richmond MT. Or alternatively, if I was with Gavin Watson, when he at the meetings, he would give them, Richmond MT would just give them directly to me.
So in other words, if one goes to each one of those documents,
Yes,
what you are saying is each one, any of those documents, they got to you either because they were given to you by Gavin Watson himself or by Mr. T. At this stage, you are not saying which ones because we are not looking at the documents. But maybe when we look at the documents, you might still not be able which one you got from Mr. Watson, which one we got from Mr. T. But those were the two people from whom you got the documents.
Correct. And I think the important part that I need to clarify is these documents came from either Nonkoba Jiba or during the meetings with MT, they would hand him the documents. He would then come and give us the documents.
Yes, yes.
That's how it would work.
I guess, but we go back to the point. That's
Yes.
the conclusion you reach because of all the circumstances, and that's what Mr. MT told you.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
And I think if you look at the documents, Chair, you'll see that they are highly confidential and secret documents.
Yes.
There's only one or two people that would have access.
Yeah.
We will go through the documents. I just want to ask one or two more questions in relation to the documents before we do that.
Okay?
But, Chair, quite independently from the evidence of this witness, no doubt the Chair will look at the documents to determine their more than probable source.
Yeah, no, I have already looked at them, and I just wanted to make sure that we understand what his evidence is, that he personally never witnessed the handing over of the documents to Mr. MT by whoever. He just knows that Mr. MT said he got them from the people concerned, and he may have other reasons to believe that what Mr. MT told him is correct. Yeah.
And you referred, amongst other things, to telephone conversations.
That is correct,
And
Chair.
where those telephone conversations become relevant, you will no doubt inform the Chair.
Will do.
Now, you say you received these documents from the persons mentioned and in the manner mentioned. Since that time, several years have elapsed. What happened to these documents? Who kept them?
I'd kept those documents with me and kept them for safekeeping.
And then at a stage, you handed them to the investigators of the Commission.
That is correct, Chair.
Did you take them with you when you left the company?
I did not take them with me, Chair, because I was going on leave like normal.
Yes.
So they were with me in a secure place because
Yeah.
I'd got to a stage where I wanted to use these documents and open it up.
Or you had access to where they were?
They were in a storage place that I'd created.
Access to?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You say you created the storage space
That is correct, Chair.
for the very purpose of securing these documents.
To clarify, yes, not only these documents, but various other documents as well, and hard drives and that. So what I did do was I hired a specific storage facility away from my premises.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Let's deal with the first of these documents. It's Annexure Q1, and it appears on page 366.
Before you proceed, Mr. Pretorius, the administration side of the commission should just talk to the owners of the building to see how the issue of bathrooms can be sorted out. I understand that there were still problems even now, so that we don't have to adjourn for long periods during tea. Okay, thank you. You may proceed.
Chair, there are facilities on the ground floor outside the building, but when I got there, certainly they were also locked.
Yes, that's what I was told. Yes, yes.
But
So-
insofar as we've been able to give instructions and insofar as people listen to us, we've tried to sort
Yes.
that problem out. And
Yes,
I now
yes.
believe even the bathrooms here
Yeah.
are open.
They are open, the ones, and they are working?
No.
Or they are not working, but they are open. Okay, no, I just want to make sure this we don't continue to have these problems where measures can be taken to make sure the proceedings are not delayed unduly. Okay, thank you. You may proceed.
Page 366. The document referred to is on page 367. Now, this appears to be an affidavit of one Hendrik Andries Trutter. Do you know who that person is?
I do. He is, I'm not sure of his rank, but he's in procurement for the Department of Correctional Services, and he's very well versed in how tenders should operate, and he was present when all the tenders were awarded to Bosasa.
Now, he himself, on the face of it, says so in paragraph 2 of the affidavit beginning at page 367.
That is correct.
We needn't go into the contents of the affidavit, save to say that it does indeed deal with procurement issues within the Department of Correctional Services.
That is correct.
But if you would look, please, at page 381, which is the last page of that affidavit, you will see that, again, on the face of it, it was commissioned at Pretoria on the 7th of July, 2009.
That is correct.
And the person commissioning the affidavit appears to have been a Mr. Cornelius Daniel de Toy, Chief Forensic Investigator, Special Investigating Unit, Rentmeester Building, Watermeer Street, Pretoria.
That is correct.
The inferences to be drawn from that can be dealt with in due course, Chair. The second document is Annexure Q2, and that appears at page 383. It again appears to be an affidavit, this time attested to by a Willem Hendrik Jacobus Pretorius. Do you know who that person is or was?
I'm well aware he's a Deputy Director for Tender Administration and that at Correctional Services.
Right. According to this affidavit at page 383, the deponent, Mr. Pretorius, was employed by the Department of Correctional Services as Deputy Director, Tender Management at its head office in Pretoria.
That is correct.
The affidavit then goes on to deal with matters relevant to procurement and deals with contracts such as the outsourcing of catering services at a youth center, the outsourcing of catering services generally, and his activities in that regard.
That is correct.
He says, for example, on page 385 at paragraph 12, I can remember that Mr. Gillingham also managed the process with regard to the drafting of specifications.
That is correct.
So it seems that the subject matter, at least of this affidavit, is the series of contracts investigated by the Special Investigation Unit.
That is correct.
Once again, if one goes to page 387, the last page of that affidavit, one will see that it was attested to on the 20th of July 2009. The Commissioner of Oaths there was a Mr. Johannes Senekal, and below the name of the Commissioner of Oaths are the words in handwriting, ex officio, SIU, second floor, Rentmeester Building, the same address.
That is correct.
Once again, Chair, the inferences to be drawn from that can be dealt with separately. These documents, generally, did they come to you or come into your possession on one occasion only or over a period of time?
There were numerous documents over a period of time. Unfortunately, I don't have all of them. I've submitted what I had.
So you have some of the documents that came to Bosasa from whatever source over a period of time.
That is correct, Chair.
And as far as you know, directly from Mr. Mti.
That is correct, Chair. If I may just add, Chair, when I left on the 15th, I'd left with the intention of going on leave, coming back and getting more documents. But unfortunately, I never went back.
Let's go then, please, to Annexure Q3, which appears at page 389. This appears on the face of it to be a memorandum from the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions, Pretoria, Special Commercial Crimes Unit, Pretoria, from Glynis Breitenbach to Advocate Simelane, described in the document as the National Director of Public Prosecutions. It's copied to other officials, and it concerns, in its own terms, the Bosasa investigation, and it's dated 4 February 2010. It seems that at this stage, from the contents of this document, that the investigation and any contemplated prosecution was now in the hands of the NPA.
That is correct.
We needn't go into the contents of the document in any detail, but simply to say that this memorandum is a report from Ms. Breitenbach to Advocate Simelane concerning the progress of the investigation into Bosasa.
That is correct.
For example, and relevant to the position of Mr. Mti and Bosasa, one can look at page 391. Amongst the various topics reported to the National Director of Public Prosecutions by Ms. Breitenbach over the 3 pages of the report are the final 2 paragraphs, which read, "In the interim, the documents received from the SIU have been read and sorted into what will form the basis of the case docket once the affidavit of the acting commissioner has been finalized." And then the last paragraph reads, "An issue that needs to be addressed on an urgent basis is the position of Mr. Linda Mti, who is 2 main suspects and who currently holds the position of Head of Security 2010 World Cup, and the impact that this investigation, once it gains momentum and attracts the attention of the media, might have. Some guidance in this regard would be greatly appreciated." You yourself gave evidence that assistance was given by Bosasa to Mr. Mti in relation to the bid for the security function at the 2010 World Cup.
That is correct.
Is this consistent with what you knew yourself at the time?
That is correct, Chair.
Then, if we may proceed, please, to Annexure Q4. It appears on page 393. The document itself appears on page 394. As this document is relevant information in regard to the progress of the contemplated prosecution and investigation. I'm going to deal with certain statements in it, but on the face of it, it appears to be a document on the letterhead of the National Prosecuting Authority.
That is correct.
It's dated 8 February 2010.
Correct.
It's a memorandum which on the face of it emanates from Advocate M. Simelane, the National Director of Public Prosecutions. And it's addressed to Advocate G. Breitenbach. Do you see that?
I do.
And it's copied to various persons.
Correct.
The memorandum reads, at least in the first paragraph, I have considered your memorandum dated 4 February 2010. Having done so, I am concerned about the turn that the case is taking. The second paragraph reads, and it's been partly obliterated by markings, Chair. All along, the matter has been reported on with suggestions that it is close to prosecution. Your summary of progress made reveals the opposite. I am therefore concerned that a simple act of obtaining a statement with which to open a docket is proving difficult to do. Then continues to make comments. The second paragraph on page 395, if I may just read it onto the record. It also appears that the NPA staff are unlikely to contribute materially at this stage. I suggest that you advise Senior Superintendent DJ Creel in writing what process to follow to get the investigation going. You and your team of Advocate Grobler and Mr. G. Nkadimeng must withdraw from the case until I am advised by the police that a docket has been opened and it is specified what assistance is required from the NPA. Accordingly, I would appreciate it if you and your team can withdraw from this case and dedicate your time and resources to cases where there are dockets, investigate or prosecute. To investigate or prosecute. Please confirm the withdrawal by 9 February 2010. Then it goes on to say, I note the point you make regarding Mr. MT, and that is a reference to the World Cup position.
That is correct.
It is mischievous to say the least. Firstly, there is no police docket or investigation underway. Secondly, and by your own admission, there is still an assessment to be made on the evidentiary value of the information currently available. How, therefore, you can start speculating and making suggestions regarding any person is beyond belief, unless, of course, it is a manifestation of a mindset with predetermined outcomes. My suggestion would be that you follow the advice in the last sentence of paragraph 3 above. And that's the, well, it's not a suggestion, it's an order to withdraw from the case.
That is correct.
These sorts of facts or reports concerning the progress of the investigation, who was involved, who was not involved, and how it was progressing, were these given to you in any other form from time to time?
Yes, it would be confirmed to me by Senior Siopela. So there was always confirmation of whatever documentation I was getting, and it would always collaborate. So there were various sources of information that would come to me, and because Senior Siopela was close to Advocate Menzi Simelane, they had a relationship. I was introduced to him in Santon. I think I go through that in my statement further on, Chair.
Yes, you in fact gave that evidence towards the beginning of your testimony.
That is correct.
Then another document of some interest is the document marked Annexure Q5, which appears at page 397. Again, I don't want to go into too much detail in relation to the contents of the document, save to point out that it is integral to information concerning the status of the investigation and contemplated prosecution. If you would look at page 397, please. It appears to be a document dated the 9th of March 2010, and it is referred to in its own terms as a special extended ministerial meeting.
That is correct.
And on the face of it, it was a meeting chaired by the Honourable Minister of Justice, Mr. Khadebe.
That is correct.
The Secretariat referred to on that same page includes Ms. J. Lepinka. Do you see that?
That is correct. And Mr. Tlali.
If you would go to paragraph 3 on page 398, please. It appears from the minute at least, and on the face of it at least, that a report was presented to, amongst others, the Minister by Advocate Similani.
That is correct, Chair.
And under the head SIU report, re Bosasa investigation, in paragraph 3 on page 398, Mr. Similani is reported to have said, at least in summary, challenges of the report was outlined, i.e., the unconstitutionality of the report in that the evidence as contained in the said report was contaminated. The SIU report cannot hold any water in any court, and that any presiding officer will not proceed with the report at hand. SIU investigation was not in line with the proper administration of justice, quote, without fear, favour and or prejudice, unquote. Incorrect sections out of their mandate was used to find evidence. Statements were not done according to the prescripts. It goes on to read, political vendetta / agenda identified. Manipulation of the public identified in that report was discussed in Parliament prior to same being handed over to the relevant exec authority. Media coverage over the report prior to having heard or confirmed any criminality in the mentioned senior officials of DCS. Not guilty until proven guilty approach as enshrined in the Constitution was totally ignored. A concern on credibility of certain individuals and or the affected organisation is a serious concern and might cost the NPA with much possible litigations. I'm quoting directly. A predetermined element was identified, as well as the race of both the investigators, SAPS, SIU, and prosecutors, NPA. Close monitoring is important to ensure fair trial and investigation, if any. Generally speaking, at this time, that is 2010, particularly March 2010, what was the tenor of the reports you were receiving regarding the progress of the investigation into Bosasa and the likelihood of prosecution?
Well, before we received the assistance here of Advocate Menzi Similani in helping us shut it down, it was very tense at that stage because we wanted to close it down. There were new contracts to be renewed. So I would be getting reports either verbal or in writing on a weekly to every second week basis. Does that answer your question, Chair?
The reports you were getting, were they consistent with the documents that you were getting?
Very.
Then if we may go to the next document, which is Annexure Q6, which appears at page 401. Of Exhibit S1. This document appears to be a document on the letterhead of the Specialized Commercial Crime Unit. It appears to have been addressed to the National Director of Public Prosecutions, Advocate Menzi Simelane, and it appears to have been authored by Advocate MC de Kock, dated 17 November 2010, and the subject matter is the Bosasa matter.
That's correct.
The purpose of this memorandum appears to have been, as recorded under paragraph 1, the purpose of this report is to apprise the NDPP of the status quo with regard to the Special Investigation Unit report on Bosasa.
That is correct.
There is then an analysis in the following pages of that report in some detail.
That's correct.
On page 403, there is a conclusion reached in the middle of the page by the author of the document. The fifth paragraph reads, "It would thus appear as if the SIU received information from various and sometimes unreliable sources and made use of the information either without verifying the facts or failing to point out the anomalies to those reading the report." Then in paragraph 4, the following is said, "From information put at our disposal, it would appear as if the bid box in respect of the kitchen tender HK2 2004 was opened 1 week earlier than the scheduled date. If this information is correct, the Bosasa bid was only received by DCS after officials had opened the bid box. This may be a serious irregularity, and we would have expected it to be mentioned in the SIU report." Do you know anything about that matter?
Chair, I just need to clarify that matter. I think that that's a bit of a, they're adding too much spice there. What happened was that the bid boxes are normally about 50 by 50 because people put in their
Yes.
envelope into the bid off box. However, when we submitted bids, they were literally busloads of bids. So the files would be packed in big boxes, and because they were in big boxes and stacked, I remember that specific bid for that tender there had 27 files, lever arch files. So there was no way you could put in the bid box, but it was there before the bid closed. That I can confirm.
Under the head conclusion on the same page, page 403, the following paragraph appears. "The SIU report would appear to have been drafted in a careless and almost casual fashion. The lack of accuracy and precision with the drafting of the report will give ample opportunity to those seeking to fault it." It then proceeds to make certain other comments on page 404. It reads, "The purpose of the SIU investigation may have influenced and informed the product that they produced. In as far as the report may have been true to their mandate, it is also clear that it would not stand up to scrutiny in a criminal court." On the face of it, then, those are the views of MC de Kock, the Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions, and reported to Advocate Simelane at that time.
That is correct.
The next document appears at page 406. It's annexure Q7, and it appears in the second bundle, Chair, bundle S2.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Chair.
Exhibit S2, yes.
Is it possible to let somebody check the air conditioning, please?
Is
pretty
it too
hot.
cold?
It's too hot on the
Too
side.
hot?
Yes,
Oh, that's
very hot,
Okay.
like Nando's.
As somebody in the, I think in the legal team should just make sure that the administration takes care of that.
Sorry for the disturbance.
Yeah, okay, no, that's fine. I think if there is somebody who has gone there, it's fine. Thank you.
The document.
So I'm sorry, so you wanted the aircon to make it colder?
If they could, Chair, I think it's this section of the,
It's
maybe
hot
with
here.
all the equipment behind me,
You say it's hot that side?
extremely.
Oh,
It's like Nando's extra hot.
well, maybe a member of the legal team could just talk to, I don't know whether it's the technical people or somebody to say the problem seems to be around that area.
Chair, if you allow me, I see there's air conditioning board over there.
No, that's fine. Somebody will take
Okay,
care of it.
thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. You may proceed, Mr. Pretorius.
Sorry for the disturbance.
Thank you.
All right.
What page did you say, Mr. Pretorius?
We're going to Annexure Q7 at page 406.
Exhibit S2. And that's Annexure Q,
Q7,
Q7, and that is at page,
406.
okay. Mr. Agrizzi, you will indicate after some time if there's been no change.
I will, thank you very much, Chair.
Yeah, okay, all right. I've got it, Mr. Pretorius.
Thank you, Chair. Thus far, just to summarize, the documents you have received seem to cover the subject of the status of the investigation and contemplated prosecution into Bosasa and others.
That is correct, Chair.
And the documents go into a great deal of detail in that regard
Most definitely, Chair.
and contain original minutes of meetings and reports concerning that topic.
That is correct, Chair.
And to the extent that some of them are letters written from one person to another, they are on what appears to be the letterheads of the NPA, is that right?
That's right, Chair.
Thank you.
There is an information note dated 17 October 2011, which appears at page 406. Do you see that?
The one marked secret on the top, I do see it, yes.
It's addressed to,
Did you receive it marked secret?
That is correct, Chair.
Thank you.
well, we have no instructions as to the status of this document, Chair. Just
Yes.
that it certainly was no longer secret by the time the witness received it.
Yes, no, that's fine. No, what I wanted to establish is that when he received it, it was marked secret.
Yes.
And as to who had marked it secret is something else.
That is correct, Chair.
The significance, it appears, of that is not only were you receiving minutes of meetings and reports, but also secret documents, or documents marked secret, rather.
That's correct, Chair.
It's an information note addressed to the commander of the Anti-Corruption Task Team, the Directorate for Priority Crime Investigations, that's at that stage the Hawks, South African Police Service. So it's an information note addressed to the Hawks, headed Progress of Investigation, Bosasa Investigation, PC5, Pretoria Central, and then there's a case number, or a reference number at least. Do you see that?
That is correct.
And for example, in paragraph 3, it says, or names witnesses that have been consulted, and refers to draft statements being prepared for signature. So you would know as a result of the receipt of this document who was being consulted and the progress of statements being taken.
That is correct, Chair.
And 3 names are mentioned in paragraphs 3.1 to 3.3, persons from whom statements were being taken. Then in paragraph 4, under the head Investigation Outstanding, in paragraphs 4.1 to 4.11, the report states exactly from whom statements were intended to be obtained, and that's clear from a reading of this document in its context.
That is correct.
So you would know from the documents you were receiving exactly who was going to be testifying or from whom statements were going to be taken,
Correct.
including, for example, in paragraph 4.8, Mr. Marco,
That is correct.
to whom payments were being made,
That is correct.
payments by Bosasa.
Correct, Chair.
Then in paragraph 5 is a report regarding various meetings that were held in relation to the prosecution. You were given detail of the contents of those meetings, between whom they took place, and what was the content of those meetings.
That is correct, Chair. Whatever we requested, we would get. There was no issue.
Mr. Pretorius, I don't know if I missed it, whether you asked about Ms. J. Sishuba referred to in 4.4, as well as Mr. Ngubo in 4.2, any connection with the names that he dealt with of people who were being paid?
Yes, I gave one example, but perhaps
Maybe.
correct, not perhaps, you are correct, Chair, it's better to list them all.
Yeah.
You're told in the document at page 407, Mr. Agrizzi, of various people who are going to be interviewed for the purpose of the taking of statements.
That is correct, Chair.
And 11 people are listed.
That is correct, Chair.
You referred to one person in paragraph 4.8, Mr. Marco, who was, as you put it, and in summary, on the payroll of Bosasa.
That is correct, Chair.
And by payroll, I mean was the subject of what you have referred to as bribes.
Correction, Chair. I just want to clarify. There's also Mr. Ngubo, so I don't want to single out one. There's actually more people.
Oh, yes,
on there.
I mentioned Ngubo and
Shishuba.
I mentioned
Yes.
but Mr. Pretorius is going to take you through those. And
Okay.
if you pick up any other one, then you must mention it.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that that was clarified.
Yes, no, he's taking you through them.
All right.
Thank
So have a look, please, at the names listed in paragraphs 4.1 and 4.11. And please tell the Chair whether any of the persons mentioned in this list were being paid by Bosasa.
Chair, 4.2, Ngubo, Bid Adjudication Committee. 4.4, Shishuba. And 4.8, Marco.
Thank you.
Sishuba was also apparently on the bid adjudication committee, and Mr. Marco also employed by the Department of Correctional Services, as indeed the other two were in the post of contract management.
Correct.
Were there people in the bid adjudication committee who were not on the payroll of Bosasa?
Chair, I
You don't know the whole committee?
can't
You don't
comment.
know? Yeah. Okay, all right. Thank you.
But in short, you were given information, secret information, as to the progress of investigations, as to who was being interviewed, from whom statements were being taken, and some of whom were persons, as we've colloquially said, on the Bosasa payroll.
That is correct, Chair.
Would you go back to paragraph 2, please?
or maybe before it does that, Mr. Pretorius, well, actually, looking at the document itself, there is at 4.3, that is at page 407, there is Mr. H.T. Mapasa, who was in the Bid Adjudication Committee, about whom you have said nothing in regard to being on Bosasa's payroll.
I can confirm that, as far as I know, I don't
Yes.
know now,
Yes.
but Mr. Mapasa,
Yeah.
Mr. Engelbrecht, Mr. Basson,
Yeah,
Mr. Sukupa, that I know of,
yeah.
they weren't on.
All the ones that you have not mentioned, as far as you know, were not on Bosasa's
Correct.
payroll. Yeah.
Correct, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Would you go back to paragraph 2, please, on page 406? Under the head Statements Obtained Since Previous Report, Mr. J. Shalabani, did you know who he was?
Yes, he was responsible for IT, and he left the department in, I think it was 2014, 2015.
Yes. And you were told in this secret document that a statement had indeed been obtained from him.
Correct.
Then if we can go back to page 407, please. At the bottom of the page, paragraph 5 is a heading, Other Meetings Attended. And we've told the chair that you were given information of various meetings relevant to the investigation, who attended those meetings, and the content of those meetings.
That is correct.
Then in paragraph 6 on page 408 is a heading, Records of Executive Management Meetings. And it appears that you were also given details of other meetings at an executive level.
That is correct, Chair.
The document at its foot on page 409 appears, at least on the face of it, to have been authored by Group Commander Creel and Commander Mudli, Colonel and Brigadier, respectively, in the Anti-Corruption Task Team.
That is correct, Chair.
Interestingly, these are not signed, and also on page 410, another author, at least potential signatory, Major General Meyering, head of the commercial branch. His name appears, but again, it's not signed. But what does appear on page 410 is that this information note was, on the face of it, compiled by Colonel D.J. Creel.
That's correct. If
On
I may
page-
also add, Chair, that sometimes we'd get unsigned documents first and then the signed documents later. Sometimes we'd get signed documents, sometimes we'd get unsigned documents.
Okay.
Annexure Q7 continues then at page 411. There is what appears on the face of it to be another secret information note. It's addressed again to the commander of the Anti-Corruption Task Team, Directorate for Priority Crime Investigations, South African Police Service. You see that?
That is correct.
Under paragraph 1, the information contained there is a list of 39 people from whom statements had been obtained to date.
That is correct.
So at the time this was given to Bosasa, it would know, notwithstanding that it was the subject matter of the investigation, at least in part, the names of 39 people from whom statements had been obtained. Correct?
That is correct.
Are there any names here that you would recognize as having been perhaps on the payroll of Bosasa?
I'm just skimming through it, Chair. These would not have been part of the payment list as far as I can see, with the exception of 137, Mabena.
Yes.
What was the position in relation to Mrs. Mabena?
Was responsible for development and care, which oversees the catering contract for correctional services.
Here it refers to her as being on the bid evaluation committee.
That is correct.
Is that in addition to the role?
In addition to her role, she would have had to sit on the bid evaluation committee.
And what is relevant in regard to Mrs. Mabena?
Well, she got paid every month.
She was one of those receiving monthly
bribe money.
payments from Bosasa.
That's correct.
Okay.
And then under the head in paragraph 2, bank statements obtained in terms of section 205 of Act 51 of 1977, a number of bank accounts are listed, 14 in fact,
That's correct.
belonging amongst others to Mr. T. I see here a mortgage loan account in the name of Autumn Storm Investments, 106 Pty Limited.
That's correct.
You've given evidence regarding that entity.
That is correct.
The item or account listed in paragraph 2.3 refers to what appears to be Mr. LMT Volkswagen Triptronic, it says here, with hire purchase and supporting documents.
That's correct.
So you were told exactly which bank accounts and other financial documents were being investigated. Was this information useful to Bosasa?
It's extremely useful, Chair, because you could, from this information, actually go and interview the witnesses. And quite simply, you will see later on in my statement and in the other witnesses, it is very easy to manipulate when you have wads of cash, especially witnesses. So what would happen is very simple. These names, these lists of names would be approached, and they would have to change the statements.
Thank you.
You received information in paragraph 3 on page 413 concerning witnesses consulted and draft statements being prepared for signature.
Correct.
And then in paragraph 4, under the heading Investigation Outstanding, on page 414 of the bundle, you are told what the plans are in relation to the obtaining of further statements and from whom.
Correct.
Once again, there are persons named on page 415 as being either authors or responsible for the report or as co-signatories, but it appears from the bottom of page 415 that this information note was compiled by Colonel D.J. Creel,
That is correct.
perused and verified by Brigadier Simon.
That is correct.
It's not necessary, safe to place it on record, Chair, to go back to the previous bundle, but it appears in paragraph 35.6.8 that you received a confidential document signed by Advocate de Kock of the Special Commercial Crimes Unit, dated 28 October 2011. It's unsigned, but it appears as Annexure Q8 on page 418. of the second bundle, Exhibit S2. Can we go there, please? This document is marked confidential. It runs from page 418 to page 443. It's not necessary to go into the contents of the document, save to place on record that it appears to be a memorandum examining the validity of a subpoena duces tecum that was served on the Special Investigative Unit during February 2011 by the Mail and Guardian newspaper.
That's correct.
Do you know anything about this?
Yes, I do. This basically was given to us as a mechanism and an argument to be able to use in terms of defending the case. This specific document I would have to take to Brian Beebuck, and he had to analyze it and formulate a document that would be given back to MT that would kind of nolly prosecute the case, because how they got the information in the investigation was not done correctly. So the whole issue was about fruit of a poison tree and all that. So I don't know if you want me to go into detail, but I don't think it's necessary.
Well, perhaps you should, because it appears that this document would have been useful to Bosasa in any attempt it would make to quash the investigation.
It's correct.
Save that it is an opinion given by Advocate de Kock to his employer, a law enforcement agency, the Special Commercial Crimes Unit.
That's correct.
So not only improper, but irregular.
Most definitely.
So
Well,
the conclusion on page 443 appears in paragraph 8.
well, Mr. Pretorius, he had asked you whether he should say more, and you said yes. I don't know whether you've got
Yes,
the more.
I just want to go to the conclusion and then
Okay.
allow him to
Okay, that's
expand
fine.
insofar as he wishes. In paragraph 8 on page 80, the conclusion reached by Advocate de Kock on 28 October 2011 is the following. I am of the view that there are various levels of argument that could be advanced in support of the view that the subpoena amounts to an abuse of the process of court. As you say, very useful information regarding the investigation for Bosasa in any attempt it might make to quash the investigation or to defend its case in court.
Let me explain it and give you the context of this document. This document
Yes.
was drafted and done by Advocate de Kock.
Yes.
But I want to make it very clear, Chair, that we have never dealt with Advocate de Kock. Advocate de Kock was never involved in trying to stymie it. This document was created because she was given an instruction, which I know of, because the big thing here was the fruit of the poison tree. Now, I'm not a legal expert at all, but what I can explain is that this document was drafted via MT's request to Advocate Jolingana to give us an overview of how to shut down the case. She must have contacted de Kock, who then gave it to her, which is why de Kock authored this document. I can only assume, unfortunately, that that's how this document came about, but I've gone through this document so many times, and it's quite clear that the document that was given to us, because we needed to know how do we go about closing down this case. And that's why it's important just now to refer to the handwritten notes, because that further collaborates this document over here. But this is extremely useful in assisting us and the attorneys in not only closing down the case, but kicking it into touch so that it would never reappear.
Well, maybe you should, from what you have said, it seems to me that you know the process that led to this document.
Yes, Chair.
And maybe you should tell me from where the first step was, so and so said the following and so on, and then the next step, this is what was done, the next step, and ultimately we got this document. If you can just tell me in that sequence.
So we were getting documents and having meetings with T on a regular basis. Chair.
Yes.
What would happen is we would always say to him, well, what do you want us to do? What's the next step?
Yeah.
All right. So Gavin wanted it clear and concise. He wanted me after every single meeting to get hold of the attorney, our attorney, and go and see the attorney, and if need be, senior counsel, and tell them exactly what transpired and give them copies of this document. So Chair, this is a small reflection of what is actually available because I couldn't get, they were all at the office.
Yes.
And they're still presumably at the office.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is that they would then give us advice. And who better to ask for advice on how to close down a case but the investigating officer or the prosecutor that's handling that case without letting them know. So you can't say, well, the Bosasa case, but give me a case similar and tell me what the risks are. And that's how this document emanates. And that's how the document comes to us. But I in no way can implicate Advocate de Kock, because I know for a fact that whoever tried to get hold of her, she wouldn't come forward with any information, and she was kind of beyond reproach. However, if I raise this document, it's going to make her look as if she's involved, which she's not. To my knowledge.
Yes, yes. Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to clear that up.
Thank you. Well, I said thank you, but I'm not entirely sure that I understand better. So, you and Mr. Watson would receive some documents from Mr. MT emanating from the NPA.
Correct.
Mr. Watson, would that say what next?
What do you want us to do?
Yeah, and then you would go to Bosasa's attorney,
That is correct.
and he would look at the documents and he would give his advice.
That is correct, Chair.
That's right. And you say that you would be wanting to see how best to effectively shut down this investigation and prosecution, possible prosecution.
That is correct.
And you say, as far as you know, Advocate de Kock was never involved in any wrongdoing relating to Bosasa.
That is correct.
Yeah. But you say there was somebody, and I don't know whether that somebody was within the NPA that you mentioned earlier, who would have been spoken to, and you think that person may in turn have spoken to somebody else at the NPA, and I don't know whether that would have been Advocate de Kock. I just want to understand that part.
Chair, that is correct. What I'm explaining is that that document emanates from de Kock. There's no doubt about it. However,
Yes.
it was not given to us freely. It was given to Jiba, Mrebi, or Jackie. Those are the only people I know. Snake, Snail, and Jay. It was given to them, who then passed it on to MT.
Yes.
So this talks about similar cases.
Or it doesn't relate to Bosasa.
No, not only Bosasa.
Yes,
It gives you an
okay.
overview, and what must have happened is they must
Okay.
have said to her, give us an overview of
Yes.
how, what's the situation in the case.
No, now I understand.
You understand?
Now
I know
yeah. Yeah.
the document pretty well.
In and out.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it doesn't refer specifically to the case, but uses
Yeah.
case
And
studies.
it wasn't written with Bosasa in mind.
Not in my
Yeah,
opinion.
but once Bosasa got it, it could make use of it for its own benefit.
Correct.
Okay.
And this then was be passed on to the attorneys and the senior counsel to deal with.
Yes, okay, all right, thank you.
Then briefly, on page 449, is annexure Q9. Again, in the series of documents you have told the Chair you received through these arrangements to which you have testified.
Correct.
This appears to deal with legal issues concerning subpoenas issued in terms of Section 205 of the Criminal Procedure Act.
That's correct, and especially Mark Taverner, I think it refers to as well.
It's a document that goes into several pages. It does refer to Mr. and Mrs. Taverner on page 461,
That's correct.
but generally is an opinion in relation to subpoenas issued in terms of Section 205 of the Criminal Procedure Act.
That's correct.
You've made comments, and it's also authored, it appears, on page 469 by Advocate de Kock.
That is correct.
The conclusion reached in the middle of page 469 reads, the letter forwarded to Advocate Mkhwebe is clearly an irregular attempt to review the issuing of subpoenas, avoid the required court appearances by the witnesses, and mislead the NPA as to the true facts concerning the legal process. Do you know anything about the contents of this document?
I was given this document, and if I recall correctly, we used some of the information here to challenge the subpoenas that were issued to Mark Taverner.
Perhaps during the long adjournment you could have a look at the contents of the document, because there are matters relevant to Bosasa in here, and the conclusion reached by Advocate de Kock is that there was a letter forwarded to Advocate Mkhwebe, which in her opinion constituted an irregular attempt to review the issuing of subpoenas, avoid the required court appearance by the witness, and mislead the NPA as to the true facts concerning the legal process. If you know anything about that letter, you can tell the Chair about that in due course after the adjournment.
Will do.
Chair, is that a convenient time?
Yes, we'll take the lunch adjournment and resume at 2. We adjourn.
Thank you.